Hello everyone and welcome to the European Social Union Debate, Eurovision's podcast series discussing the potential establishment of a European Social Union with policy experts, politicians and institutional representatives. This podcast series is a spin-off of an editorial project published on the Eurovision's website, where top scholars from European universities discuss the potentialities of a European Social Union for the EU. My name is Alexander Damiano Ricci and I'm your host. Today, joining the third episode, Brando Benifei, MEP of the Group of the Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats in the European Parliament, and member of the European Parliament's Committee on Employment and Social Affairs. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Benifei.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Mr. Benifei, how would you evaluate the currently ending legislature from the perspective of the implementation and development of social policies in the European Union?
Well, my opinion is that we have to be honest, we have failed to really make this European Union a triple-A social union, as Mr. Juncker has promised at the beginning of this mandate. We have obtained some important steps that we must not underestimate. For example, we reformed the Postal Workers Directive that was seriously disrupting the mobility and competition between workers, creating a social dumping on workers' rights. And for example, we also approved a directive on transparent and predictable working conditions that is in fact affecting the new forms of work and especially platform workers in a way that has been positive in the sense of enhancing rights of this kind of new forms of work. But we have a lot of things that have been left in the middle. For example, we have discussed but never completed a discussion and also not proposing a real legislative proposition regarding an unemployment insurance scheme at European level. And we also didn't obtain a final decision on the European Social Fund Plus for the next period. The fund regarding employment measures, regarding fighting against poverty. On all these issues, we have been making from the Parliament side a lot of enhancements in the new social fund, but then we need the member states to also approve this new legislative period for the European Social Fund. We have a lot of things that are the middle that we need to complete. So we can say that we have a suspended judgment on how much social objectives we obtained in this mandate. We will see a lot of things in the beginning of the next term. If we get results from this work of these years, also on the so-called social pillar that is being developed into a series of legislative pieces and on these funds like the social fund. So we can say a suspended judgment.
Right. We will come back to some of the things you mentioned right now. At Eurovisions, we advocate for the development of a fully fledged European social union, an institutional framework that goes beyond the much more common concept of a more prominent social dimension of the European Union, so to speak. In his contribution to the European Social Union debate, former EU Commissioner Laszlo Andor argues that a social union cannot just mean more EU-level legislation, as it cannot purely be built through more policy coordination or through budgetary instruments. Anyhow, he says that all three arms of governance have to play a role in due coordination. Which of these three arms of governance, legislation, coordination and budgeting, would need to become a priority right now, and why?
In my opinion, we need all three, and especially we need, for sure, more investment in the sense of the budgetary arm, because we still have a very, very limited European budget. It's just 1% of the European GDP, and we need more common investment projects, more social projects at all levels. We advocated now in the new social fund, for example, for direct support for local organizations developing innovative measures for integration of refugees and asylum seekers. And I think this really needs more support also in terms of budget. Also, we need more money if we want to support more transitional measures for the transformation of our economy regarding automation, regarding artificial intelligence. We need to have more investment. All European Union is growing very limitedly. We have a slow growth that needs more investment. So in my opinion, we need all three, but the budget is very, very important.
Recently, EU institutions agreed upon the establishment of a European Labour Authority, and we call it ELA. I would like to ask you, what kind of change can the ELA bring about in the current setting of the single market, and what does the establishment of the European Labour Authority imply in terms of social policies?
Well, my opinion is that the ELA could have been a useless symbol. The Commission proposal was a bit limited. We worked a lot as Parliament to make this ELA more significant, and I think we obtained some good results in the sense that the ELA, in fact, will be the instrument to check the concrete and correct implementation of EU labor legislation and all issues regarding transnational workers that move between borders in a regular way. And also, it will be possible to start investigations from the social partners. This is just extremely important to avoid ELA to become just a very bureaucratic and slow institution. And I think this was really needed as a step, an institution able to really oversee the implementation of the labor laws at European level that still is very patchy and sometimes not really the same in all the European Union.
Nevertheless, MEPs were not able to find an agreement on the revision of the so-called Coordination of Social Security Systems Directive. Can you explain to us what the bone of contention is at the moment?
The issue is the fact that we still have a very divided parliament, but also the council being very divided regarding reforming social security systems in terms of which country has to pay for benefits, rights. A worker moves to another country after having worked in another one. And these mobility issues and their impact on the social security are very complex and need to find some compromise in terms of how this works, in terms of the timing in which a new country becomes responsible for the new worker, etc. We still have a very divided situation, but I'm sure that we will find a final agreement in the new parliament to also have a more integrated social security system in the European Union. We cannot have an uncertain and fragmented system where sometimes even the member states try to just circumvent the existing norms. So we need to find some compromise between different interests, especially from the perspective of the East and Western Union countries.
Right, this division between different areas of the EU and more specifically between East and West became apparent also on the occasion of the discussion and approval of the Mobility Package 1. Given these situations, do you think that it makes sense to talk about a more social Europe in the medium and long term? Or, individual country interests seem to tear apart the Union and even political groups, I guess, rather than turning economic and social convergence into a reality. Did you experience this division in your group in a strong way? And what can you do about it?
Well, my opinion is that the S&D Group is less divided than most other groups regarding these issues, but we still have differences. And my opinion is that the next European political groups will be a bit reshaped also by these kind of tendencies. There will be some changes also linked to the need to put together more forces that are also more united in these regards with these topics. But also, I'm convinced that we cannot advance the social union over a certain limit if we don't differentiate between the Eurozone and or even some countries in the Eurozone, as we have heard recently from some political leaders, to have the social Union being strengthened in some European countries, building inside the European Union an avant-garde in this sense, through a structural cooperation or through other instruments. I think even an external treaty need to see what is feasible, but I don't think we can advance all the 28 member states all together. We still need, in fact, to do something. I mentioned the unemployment insurance scheme. Maybe this will be an issue where we will need to work a group of countries together and not just the whole of the EU. We cannot accept a paralysis on the future of the European Union.
The proposal for the next multi-annual financial framework has been discussed before the elections which are coming up. However, the new parliament could significantly differ in terms of party composition. Do you think we will go towards major changes in the discussion?
No, my opinion is that most of what we discussed and approved will be left as it is for two reasons. One, because it's complicated to reopen files, also regarding the budget. It will be easier for the new parliament to negotiate with the text that we approve, negotiate with the member states, and maybe change the priorities in terms of what we can also compromise on with the member states. This will be probably the way of working on this topic. On the other hand, we will have also a changed parliament, but not completely revolutionized. So there will be some new political balances, but not a completely changed European Parliament.
Right. Given that we are in electoral campaign and you are touring northern Italy, the electoral program of your party, the Italian Partito Democratico, mentions the need for a pan-European unemployment scheme, which you mentioned before, and the introduction of Eurobonds. These are quite bold proposals. Don't you think it equals just wishful thinking?
I think that, in fact, many European countries and political groups, we realize that we do need these important steps in terms of a social union, because otherwise we will be completely victims of the emerging strength of new powers. Think of the assertiveness of China today. I think we need a federal Europe. This implies also have a stronger social union. And I think that many countries and political forces will in fact realize that we don't have any other opportunity. And okay, maybe we will have to start from some countries and build a deepening of the union starting from some countries. But we also need some bold steps together. Otherwise, we will just have a future of decline.
Thank you very much, Mr. Benifei.
Thank you very much.
And that's it for today's show. You can find many other contents about the ideas, discourse and policies of social Europe on Uvision's website at www.uvisions.eu. Until next time, goodbye.